Hello from Kensington Security Consulting, where we bring education to national security. This is Mark Silinsky welcoming you to a videocast that updates some of the issues we discussed in my upcoming book, Cauldron of Terror, Hamas, Israel, and the World, as well as in some of the podcasts we recently have put out for you. We will start with the Eurovision contest 2026. Once again, Israel placed second for the second consecutive year. Not bad. There are generally 24 30, 33, 34 countries participating in any one year. Now, this year, 5 countries boycotted the contest because Israel took part. Spain's leader, Pedro Sanchez, said, quote, "Our position is clear and unequivocal. Until the barbarity ceases, neither Russia nor Israel should participate in any international competition." Ireland neither participated in nor broadcast the contest, blaming Israel for the killing of just too many Palestinians and targeting journalists in Gaza. It was much the same for Iceland, with a curious explanation, and I quote, "The song contest and Eurovision have always had the aim of uniting the Icelandic nation, but now it's clear that this aim cannot be achieved, and it is on these grounds that the decision is taken," unquote. Now, if you understand this, you're one up on me. I envy you. How does Eurovision unite the Islamic nation? I don't see that at all. I didn't know that the Islamic nation was divided. Would the Eurovision further divide it? What are the divisions? Is there a large Palestinian population there? I'm kind of quiet about it. I didn't know there really was much of an Islamic nation. A lot of Vikings. They look great. Well, it's a nation. It's a country that goes way, way back. Blonde and beautiful people. Well, all right, fine. But when I read the communique, and I read it a few times, I think that something was lost in translation. Well, the Dutch kept away too. They cited, quote, "severe humanitarian suffering in Gaza, the suppression of press freedom, and the political interference during the last Eurovision Song Contest. 2025, I presume. Don't know what else it could be." Yeah, all right. Let's go point by point. There is humanitarian suffering in Gaza. They do suffer. Though I think reasonable people could debate about whose fault it is. I think October 7th, 2023 had something to do with it. I wonder if maybe some people might blame Gazan leaders. Well, there's the press freedom. The press has its limitations. The press is not free to partner with Hamas operatives in terrorist attacks or to provide them with shelter or intelligence or provisioning. That is too much. Yes, okay. Now, on the last point, interference during the 2025 contest, this was new to me. Now, I have not really followed the Eurovision very much. The Dutch didn't explain what that interference was. Slovenia boycotted the program in a rage, and it would not air it on its television. Instead, they offered a program on Palestinian suffering. Well, these were the stated reasons. Was there more to it than that? More behind these decisions? Well, I don't know if Israel cheated in Eurovision, as the Dutch claimed, but which Israelis cheated? Was it very high level, people with access to influence, information? Might it have been a few low-level Israelis somehow involved? Israel's national broadcasting outfit received a formal warning from Eurovision for encouraging viewers to cast 10 votes for their act. This move seemed to be in breach of competition rules, but the voters have multiple votes. Maybe there's something to this. Maybe you have some information on that. Were other countries held to the same standards? Also, Turkey occupies Cyprus and has dislodged Greek populations. Does that ever come up? Ever in a vote? I'd be curious to know. My guess is it doesn't. Well, Israel does have something to celebrate. The boycott did not work. Only 5 came and Israel participated. All right, so they won it this year, and maybe they'll win it next year. It'll be in Bulgaria. But what about the year after that and successive years? Is there any reason to believe that critics of Israel will simply rest and let it be? I don't think so. Every year, the continent becomes more and more Islamic, and politics seem to lean that way. The continent is also restive, and for a number of reasons, governments, rulers, leaders have every reason to side with Muslims and with the left on that issue. There are very few Jews left in Europe. There's all sorts of talk about how much influence. No, they don't have much influence. Many are leaving. They're picking up and going. They see there's no future there, and increasingly they know where they're not wanted. So politicians have every reason to partner with these growing constituencies. The new left of the 1960s and 70s lay low for a while, but it was reborn in Europe and the United States, came back with a vengeance. Its adherents despise Israel too. This is the Green-Red Alliance. We talk about it a lot and will continue to do so. I think it's very important. The partnership between leftists and Muslims on key issues of intersection. So efforts to boycott and ostracize Israel in Europe are likely to accelerate. But Israel placed second 2 years in a row through popular voting. Did Israel cheat, as some Europeans claimed? I don't know. I don't think so. Those Eurovisionistas who boycott and despise Israel were certainly on the lookout for cheating. Now, there have been Eurovision contests for 70 years, and the guardrails against cheating have evolved over time. If you have evidence of cheating, please let us know. So, assuming there was no massive and effective cheating, many Europeans wittingly voted heavily for Israel's song. Why? Well, my speculation is no better than yours, but Israel once again fueled a massive wave of public enthusiasm in the country, and it translated into votes. Israel takes Eurovision very seriously. Half of each participating country's score comes from a professional 5-man jury, while the other half comes from viewers voting at home through phone calls, text messages, and the Eurovision app. Each country awards points separately for jury and public voting. Israel simply gets the vote out. So Prime Minister Netanyahu's Hasbara office, or the Israel's Overseas Information Unit, aggressively promoted the voting. The Irish Times and several European intellectuals made much of this, as though Netanyahu and Israeli leaders did something wrong. Well, what is wrong with that? What am I missing here? When the Olympics were important, often in the Soviet Union, East Germany certainly, the national leaders of those countries said, support your team, support your country. Well, that seems harmless enough to me, but let's take a look at the New York Times reporting on this issue. It's very important. You know, the Times, the old gray lady, the journal of record. At least one article cast Israel as engaged in some kind of warfare, aggression, harming peace. No more than a song, it's information warfare. Quote, this is what they say. Governments aren't supposed to intervene in voting. Eurovision is a contest for public broadcasters and singers, not governments, unquote. Well, what do they mean by intervene? Are government employees under an implicit gag order? If so, who says? If it's explicit, where are those rules? Does the Times make the rules? If Israel didn't break or bend the rules, how can we explain, well, Israel's receiving 33.3% of the Spanish public vote, or about 49,000 votes last year. Spanish leaders despise Israel. Just look at Sanchez's public statements. I don't know how Israel's song, Michelle, took so many Spanish votes, but the song itself may have had something to do with it. You know, the story goes that in 1958, a gangly Texan, Harvey Van Cliburn, fresh out of Juilliard, performed brilliantly at the Tchaikovsky competition in Moscow. The jury was certain he had won, but they trembled. They needed to get Kristoff's approval. This was at the height of the Cold War. And one of them said, Comrade Kristoff, what should we do? Kristoff responded, did he deserve to win? Yes, absolutely, Chairman. Then give him the prize! And they gave him the prize, catapulting him into a national sensation and the pride of Texas. Well, in the same vein, maybe Spaniards liked Israel's song, Michelle. It is possible some may have used it as a protest against the Sanchez government. A lot of people don't like him, and he is loudly anti-Israel. So there may have been a kind of inverse dig at their leader, pro-Israel, anti-Sanchez, maybe a bit. It could have been a sympathy vote for Israel. Some people are simply, they're Catholic, they're not Muslim, they're conservative, and they align themselves with Western values. And this is a way to say, hey, you may not know it, but I'm with you. And these are just some ideas. All right, what are my final thoughts? I have no evidence that Israel did anything wrong. Where's the proof of cheating? There was great national enthusiasm in Israel for participating by singing and voting. Isn't that what Eurovision's all about? Isn't that what it's supposed to do? Promote enthusiasm, harmony, rather than, invade Poland or things like that. Many of the musicians, too, in the nations have had good musical years and bad ones. ABBA shone in 1974 with Waterloo. Britain had some good years, too, and in 2026, Britain charted dead last. European musicians have had good times and bad. All right, so what are your thoughts? If you think Israel cheated, please let us know. We'll verify it and give your voice air in our next videocast. Well, now we turn from song to savagery, and we examine columnist Nicholas Kristoff's claim that Israelis systematically tortured captive Arabs in Israeli prisons. According to Kristoff, victims were raped and sexually tortured. That's quite a claim, considering the alleged rapists were both Homo sapiens and canines. You heard this, I'm sure you have, and I hope you're as skeptical about this as I am, and maybe as cynical as I am about some of the reportage that comes out of the New York Times, the old gray lady. So as of late May 2026, Kristoff has not walked back his claims of Israeli prison torture and dog rapists. He stands by his sources, which were primary the Euromed Human Rights Monitor, as well as 7 individuals with dubious background. Kristoff acknowledges this, quote, "There is no evidence that Israeli leaders ordered the rapes, but in recent years they have built a security apparatus where sexual violence has become, as the United Nations record put it, one of Israel's standard operating procedures and a major element in the ill treatment of the Palestinians," unquote. Well, this European Med Human Rights Monitor added that Israel uses, quote, systemic sexual violence that is, quote, widely practiced as part of organized state policy. Well, here you see a contradiction. Kristoff says there's not orders from the Israeli leaders. Here, the Euromed seems to say that it's state policy. Is it state policy without orders or somehow transmitting orders? Kristoff bases his claims on the credibility of the Euromed Human Rights Monitor. So let's take a look. The founding chairman, Rami Abdu, is fixated on Israel and its alleged sexual deviancy. In a 2023 social media post, Abdu shared a map of Israel marking locations where he claimed sex offenders lived. The map was errant nonsense, nothing to back that up whatsoever. It was discredited, but remained online for a long time. Abdu also claimed that photographs of victims of the Syrian civil war were Gazans killed, maimed, tortured by Israelis. No, they weren't. So who is the chairman of Euromed's board? None other than Richard Falk, about whom we have a profile in Cauldron of Terror. This man is far from neutral or objective and is very supportive of radical Palestinians and those who despise America. He is the personification of the Red-Green Alliance, about which we have discussed extensively in other podcasts. Does this mean that Euromed's claims are necessarily false? No, of course not. They could be true, but where's the proof? If you have dubious sources, then you would have to have solid proof. As more information about Kristoff claims come in, we'll keep you informed. Okay, we're going to leave you with a very quick update on the yellow pig of Padua, that embattled swine. A few weeks ago, we had a podcast about a dust-up between senior Muslims, particularly an effort by a senior Muslim, a village elder, and a deli owner in Padua, Italy. The Muslim man demanded that the owner remove the offending pig from public view, claiming that the plastic pig was an affront to all Muslims in Padua As of this writing, the pig still stands proudly in the window, visible to all who pass by. My view is that this incident in itself doesn't rock the continent. It doesn't shake the foundations of Italy, but it is important in that it is one in an avalanche of demands made by Muslims in Europe. If this pig is defenestrated, other demands and concessions will follow. Mark my words. Okay, so this wraps up Videocast number 4, in which we provide an update on Eurovision, Kristoff's claim, and alleged police brutality, as well as the notorious Yellow Pig of Padua. Nothing in this Videocast or in any other thing we produce represents the official policy of the United States. Until next week, on behalf of Kensington Security Consulting, thank you very much for listening. Out here.